I am Andy Meyers, and I work with 3 Magnets sites here in Napa Valley Unified School District. And I am here today with my partner,
Jen Ellison, and I run the Technology Design Lab at Phillips Elementary, which is where all of our students K through 5 cycle through, and we do projects that require technology.
And we are putting this on through the Napa Learns Digital Innovator project or program, which is promoting different high quality EdTech professional learning. It is free to all Napa County teachers, and is led by some, not all,
2,
but at least 2, well, at least 1 of the most acclaimed educators here in our district.
Acclaimed. All right.
So
we didn't write that part.
Usually I would be saying it about you guys, so it doesn't sound so,
like a little bit weird. Okay.
braggadocious.
So today, what we're going to look at is, in addition to what you see on the outline agenda here, is we're going to look at some tools that you can do that might be part of the initial hour of code that you did, or activities that you've done during Computer Science Week. But we also are going to go beyond that too, in the sense of kind of the pedagogy, and how maybe you see the value in it, but you have an administrator or other teachers that don't see the why. Why would I do that? And kind of like you were talking about, Chuck, it's not just, typing in things to make the robot move. There's deeper learnings, and Jen has some research that she's done on that she'll also talk about.
Yeah. Now?
Not now.
Okay.
But, well, if you want.
I don't know the sequence of. Yeah. Okay. Well, so when I was doing my master's, my research project was actually on the difference between drag and drop coding and actual writing of coding. And so I teach my students some script languages. Like, for example, we've learned JavaScript, some HTML, and I've even done SQL with my students. So I had a group of 5th graders, and I gave them a 2-step math quiz before I taught them how to code, and then I gave them the same 2-step math quiz afterwards. And of course, my sample was really small, but there was some significant results from that information, in that I tracked the number of problems they got correct, as well as the time spent on each problems. And as far as number of problems correct, first of all, the first time around, it was really not good. The second time around, it was slightly better. So there was just a small significance there, but the amount of time each student spent on each problem doubled. And I think that that's one of the benefits of coding, is that being exposed to that sequential thinking, that logic, results in more endurance to tackle difficult or complex problems. At least, that's what I've seen in my classroom over the last few years. So I was not a natural coder, but started teaching here at Phillips 5 years ago. And at that time we had 6th graders, and I was thinking, well, what skills could I give them that might help them support their families, not just in the future, but now? And I thought, well, nobody cares how old you are if you can code. And so I decided to teach them to code, but I didn't know how to code. So we all went to Khan Academy together, and there are over 100 lessons on some really real coding languages. And we did those 100 lessons together. And, I've been kind of off and on coding ever since. So that's kind of, but yeah, what do you guys, if anybody wants to share, what do you think the benefits of coding are? Have you seen any already?
I think it bridges the space between video games and the classroom, because I think that's the hook for a lot of kids. They come into school, and we're all about the reading and the writing and the arithmetic, but they want to bring this to a digital format, and being able to see how they can code, and then they can bring stories into coding and what they're creating. I think that's the big part I see in 4th grade.
Yeah, and Lori, would you say it's an instant process, so they can see right away what they did, correct, incorrect, and then if it works, what they can do with it, right?
Right, and I think that for those that are tenacious or perseverant, they really do go far. There are some that get, completely rattled when they hit a wall, and that requires some help.
Definitely. Yeah.
I think coding is really important. This is more a secondary skewed answer, but I think it helps remove the mystery behind machines. And as more and more of our lives are computerized, I think it's really important that that students have some understanding of how things work behind the screen. And it's not unlike the importance of media criticism today, even though media criticism hasn't really found a formal place in everyone's curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
It should, and it's related to literary criticism, that when we're teaching, and it all starts in elementary school with close reading and learning how to find facts in a piece of writing versus opinions. It's just learning how things are put together,
Sure.
And so this is the basis of that for the technology in our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could tack on to that too, one of the really exciting things that we've been able to do at Napa Learns in funding some computer science-based curricula and programs within the district is bringing students to work sites where they will see, at a very, very sophisticated level, some of the latest technology and how what they're learning in coding or computer science class actually could translate into a career for them. And we're specifically trying to do more of that regionally as a way to help students think about what they might be interested in doing when they graduate high school or graduate college. Because there's certainly, I think even as much as it's great to teach computer science, like why are we teaching computer science? And having students understand the value of the technical skills and the opportunities that are out there, I think are equally as important as providing that foundation. And I know Rafa can attest to that too, because he's been to some of those field trips with students.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and also I think that it also helps as a math teacher. It helps with their critical thinking skills. In coding, if you make a very, very small error, it doesn't run.
Mm-hmm.
So that same thing happens with math, except there's no way to check.
Right.
Unless the teacher tells you you're right or wrong.
Right.
So as Mario mentioned, I was on a field trip to Lodi.
Yeah.
And to the Tranquero winery, and it was amazing. It's amazing how robots are doing everything now. More impressive to me was their warehouse, where the warehouse, all the wine is put out by machines, and it's organized, and it looked amazing. So it's future. It's the future.
Yeah, and it's not just, can we get kids on a path, but can kids create a path that didn't exist before?
Yeah.
Which is really exciting, with that different set of eyes and problem-solving skills and curiosity that we as adults might have lost somewhere along the way. That kid with that fresh view is like, oh, well, what if we just do this?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's exciting. Keep going with that. Let's follow that path. And just following that curiosity and having kids be able to feel like they can do something, coding promotes that drive.
It's like putting a pencil or a crayon in the hand of a kid, because if they know how to use it, then they can create whatever they want. And I feel like coding is that way for this next generation too. Like they, if there's not on the simplest level, especially with elementary kids, if there's not a video game the way you want it, then make it. And then, so don't just be passive and accept what's handed to you, but go ahead and create on your own.
I've noticed too that it's really interesting that I think maybe 5 to maybe 7 years ago, when computer science education was really becoming like when Codeorg was really gaining traction and just starting out, there was a big focus on computer science and not, the message wasn't creativity through computer science necessarily. It was very computer science focused. And I see, it's funny today, now it's people lead with creativity and which I really love, because I think, especially at the elementary level, I think it's a great way to bring that to students, right? As like this is another, like to your point, Jen, this is another cram, right? This is another opportunity to be creative. And I don't think computer science has always been sold that way at the elementary level, but it's starting to lead with that creative message. And as like a technologist and someone who thinks a lot about the future, I always think about, what are the skills that can't be automated? And, it's the creative skills. I mean, I'm glad Chuck's here because you know all about it, Chuck. I mean, pretty
That's why
soon,
I jumped on. Yep.
Yeah, pretty soon computers are going to be doing everything. And I think, creativity is the most important thing we can teach our students. So.
Yep, I tell my kids that robots will be doing everything except for problem solving and, and creating. Yeah.
Yeah, Adobe calls it creative problem solving, which I really like.
Yeah.
So as we kind of keep this conversation moving, and we'll touch upon a lot of what you guys were talking about. Matt Miller had an article that I was looking at about 6 reasons why I teach coding. So I took some of what he did and then some of what Jen and I talked about and kind of came up with just a few pictures to look at and things to have thoughts around before we do a deep dive into the tools. So one of the reasons why, if someone's like, well, why are we coding? What's the reason why we have kids on these devices and kind of technology in general is this is a chart that I created a few years ago that looks at a brief history of, our educational technology, starting all the way with the desk and, the one-room schoolhouse, going over to Scantrons, the Apple IIe, the DVD player or Laserdisc player, all the way to now smartphones and technology. And as you looked at it, what's really changed, what's really shifted is who has the power over these devices and the information. So back in the day, a long time ago, it was all teacher controlled. And now with the explosion of the internet and personal devices, it can be in the hands of our students and they can create. So we are no longer the holders of all information. The library was a big depository for information as well, and it was only open at certain hours. But now you have all these things to use. So we have a responsibility, I feel, and we feel that we need to shift or change with that. We've talked about the idea of, if there's a video game that's out there that you don't like it, you don't like anything that you play, so why don't you create your own thing? So this is from Austin Kleon has a book. He has a few books, but this is from his called Keep Going. And if there's something that you want to read or create, or learn about, is there something about it out there? Yes or no? Well, if there is, go research it, go after it. If there's not, okay, you can write it. You have the tools to empower yourself to do that thing. As we also look, like, this engages that curiosity. And a lot of you guys talked about that, where they can follow what they're passionate about. And George Couros puts it this way. He says, our job sometimes is simply be the spark, help build confidence, and then get out of the way. And we were talking about how code, you can run an auto debug it to find the problems. It'll give you feedback. It's some things that we as a teacher can't do because those barriers we put up. So how can we kind of get beyond that? A lot of coding now you can have to promote collaboration. So here I'm going to give you guys a challenge, and we'll talk about that with the tools, but I want you guys to build something. And a lot of that goes along the idea of, alone you can do, or alone we're smart, or you're smart, but together we are brilliant. So how can we work together to solve problems, to make a better something? And then finally, how do we move from the consumer mindset where we are just taking things in, and how are students doing that, which is pretty surface level knowledge, to where are we going to create deeper levels of learning? And that's where you have that creator mindset. So with that in mind, let's check out some tools that are out there.
And actually, before we check out the tools, I was just thinking, like, during the dark ages, because I'm hecka old, but I used to teach freshman English, and I got tired of grading 120 papers on the Odyssey. And so I decided to open the door, and this is back in the dark ages. And I would say, okay, we just finished reading this. What you're supposed to do is either write a paper or take a test. how about you pitch me instead something that you would like to create that would take the place of that? And it needs to be about the equal amount of work. So this was a while back, and I would get stop motion animation that was done like with a VHS, and I would get one girl composed a totally unique piece of music, a theme for the play. So I started to get better and better work, and I think if we put the tools of technology in the hands of students and then allow them to use those tools to express their learning and understanding to us, they will be far more creative, and they'll work much harder than they ever would if we were just dictating to them every little thing that they do. And I would love to travel back in time with all the technology I have now and give that same assignment, because I mean, what I got already was just, I mean, it was crazy. One group built a puppet stage, made the puppets, convinced their dads to bring it into the classroom, and did a live puppet performance of one of the stories from the Odyssey. And it was just amazing. And I have no evidence of it because it was the Dark Ages, but it was really great.
Happened.
Right. Yeah. So, oh, well, he finally gets home. So just so you know. Anyway.
Spoiler alert.
So, yeah.
Can I ask a question too, really quick, before we get into the tools? Do you think you could explain why you guys picked these set of tools that we're going to see? Because there's a lot out there, so.
Yeah, I tried to keep the list to not be overwhelming. They're tools that I've used. I've used actually more than this, so we're open to talk about any. But I just figured it was a good place to jump off.
Awesome.
A lot of these have good price points.
Yes.
I feel like
some of them are free.
Yeah, some of them are free. But a lot of them, you can get a lot of use out of them. So it's not just a one and done piece. And there are a lot of coding tools out there that do that one thing really well, but you as a classroom teacher don't want to have 20 different things to do 20 different or 20 different products to do 20 different things. So a lot of these have multi-use purposes. So
Yeah.
we try to help you guys out with that.
And honestly, it should never be about the tool. That you should always start from the end point of what is it that I want my students to create, and then figure out backwards, like what would they need to know how to need access to in order to do that. So.
And with that, if you have questions about your own personal classroom, you can always contact us or Napa Learns, and we can have that conversation about, so I'm trying to do X, what do I need to accomplish that? As opposed to, oh, they had that on the list, I'm buying it, but they're not sure,
Right.
Kind of, it sometimes is a reverse way of thinking about it, but it's like the ed tech way to think about it, is really start with your purpose and then match it with tools that are appropriate.
Right. Yeah.
Good call out, Mario.
Yeah. And Code.org is obvious because they really promote Hour of Code and Computer Science Week. They put together special shorter lessons or programs that students can do during those times. Like during Hour of Code, they have, this year they have Frozen, they have, if you click on that, this one right here, this is specifically for this sort of time frame, but they actually have courses that you can go through. I believe those cost money. I don't know. I haven't dug into it. I always just do their free stuff because I'm all about the free. So
I believe all their stuff is free.
Oh, even better.
And I'll also mention that if anyone's interested in going deeper with anything we're going to see, I know that they offer a lot of professional development grants for teachers. So
yeah,
I'd be happy.
And their teachers' guides are great, and sometimes they even have videos. So these are the ones that like a lot of classes will do during Computer Science Week or during Hour of Code. The dance party. They love Minecraft until they realize it's not really the same as the Minecraft they're playing at home. So AI for Oceans was actually amazing. Mm-hmm. It's new this year. And it really not only just gave them an opportunity to program, I put that in quotes because they're using basic blocks, but it really taught them how AI works. And it was like all the way down to, I think second graders were my youngest people I had working on it. And they had, it taught them how you have this robot, but you have to train the robot so it's able to identify the correct items. And so it was just like a really good lesson. But yeah, so there's an endless amount of information on code.org, but if you've never used it at all, I recommend these shorter things that you can do as opposed to their like straight up curriculum. And it does get more sophisticated. It moves away from drag and drop to some more sophisticated code, not in these shorter ones, but in some of their other lessons. So, and I have 2 middle schoolers personally, and they love Dance Party. So, because it's current artists with appropriate music, and you get to program the dance routine. So I'm sure that, like I used to teach high school, they'd complain about how it's for babies, but then they'd start playing it and they'd love it. So that's my theory.
And this is a great too, if I finish early activity that's engaging, it'll keep them on task and challenged. That's a lot of times you have to create that. But I would put this just in my Google Classroom as a resource. If you finish early, remember, you can always go and do these activities because it is challenging. It'll keep them, on task with something, and it will keep them going. So,
yeah.
Would you show me again how you found that page?
Okay, I'll go back. I just clicked on Start Learning.
Oh, okay.
But you can also get there if you go, like, here's the frozen activity, but you kind of have to, and here's Dance Party, but you have to kind of know what you're looking for. But Hour of Code is where it has the shortest stuff. And if you click on it from that spot, as opposed to the one I did before, you see you have access to the teacher guides, and then here's where the students would click. So it's all together. This one's for older students, which is App Lab, which, I'm sure you want to make your own app. There you go. It sort of takes you through that process. So they have Star Wars. That was from last year. That's really cool.
So they archive them. So from the past, they keep them there. Yeah. And then they have these little, starts off with a video, and then there's little very mini modules that kind of, or prompts that lead them into the task. And they can debug it there and then try and figure out what it is that they need to do.
Yeah, I think AI for Oceans was 8 little stops, modules that they completed. And in a 40-minute session, some of my students who were really tenacious could do all of them in that 40-minute session. So, but yeah, and it will get as deep as it teaches them loops, and it actually teaches them some pretty complex things, but in a way that's pretty natural. So that my theory is that if I keep exposing my elementary school students to it when they go to middle school and high school and learn more sophisticated code writing, that it'll feel familiar to them and it will logically make sense to them. So.
And really quick, could you open one of those up and show us what it looks like?
Sure.
So up here are the lessons. And this very first one is a video.
My name is Ale Flores, and I'm a product manager at Alexa.
So, and often they pull real people from real jobs. So she works for Amazon Alexa, and she's gonna talk about the importance of machines in our lives. And then it will move on to, unless you really want to see the whole video, it will actually move on to tasks. I don't know why, but that sound that they gave us is very satisfying. Especially like when all my students were doing it, I'm like, oh, I love this. That's not. We're gonna move our computer because we thought we were plugged in, but apparently that power bank's not working.
Come with us, people.
Come across my classroom.
How do you keep your lights on?
It's funny because I haven't moved and they've stayed on. I'm surprised. I guess we're moving just enough. Anyway, so then it takes them through this particular assignment. It's taking them through the process of teaching this robot here what's garbage and what's fish so that this robot can be trained to clean the ocean. So, and if you can see here, it goes through all these different modules. And then when you get to the end, and notice that I think the diamond ones are videos. Oh, wow, just kidding. I don't know why that came. Okay. Then it actually takes them to a screen where they can ask you to print out a certificate. So anyway, and then another website that's kind of similar is Tinker, which is also coding. Tinker does actually have a lot of paid portions of it. When I first started using it, it was all free, but I think they're really have put some prices on some things, but there are some free things, especially during Hour of Code. It's actually very similar, but they have some, like they have Barbie, so my first graders get, like, they lose their mind over that. Yeah. So they just have different games, and there's Hot Wheels, and then Monster High used to be very popular. It's not as popular now, sorry to say. But again, they have a lot of free things that students can do, and it takes them through a challenge. So this is from NASA, which is I think new this year, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay. I don't. Your computer's very touchy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And notice here, this is HTML, CSS. This is JavaScript. So this is a more sophisticated level where students can learn, and Python as well. So students can learn real coding languages.
Can you kind of explain like the difference between like something like Code.org where it's like block based or it's like all point and click versus like, I'm guessing on these ones you could actually code?
Yeah, so Blockly is I believe Blockly is a Google code that they created where you are snapping commands together. So think of like Legos, you snap this to this, and then it creates this, as opposed to the other languages where you are typing in the actual physical code that responds to what you type in. So Google has made the blocks to represent what the code is. And Code.org, I believe you can click see code.
And it'll flip it.
And it'll show what the code looks like. And every time you complete a challenge, it'll say, you've written three lines of code.
Right.
So it's kind of, Code.org is really that starter Kool-Aid, get them into it, make them aware of what they're doing. And then this, the HTML, Python, Ruby, those types of things are the specific coding language itself.
Yeah, like this is a lesson on HTML, and it's, I assume, I actually haven't done this particular one, but it's showing them how when you make changes in code here, it's going to change how this looks to the outsiders because this happens to be HTML. And I clicked on style. So so this is more what we're used to seeing when we think of code. Kids today think of code as puzzle pieces that they snap together. And it's actually one thing that I think we really need to make sure that kids understand. Like when you go to work for Google, it's not going to be a bunch of cute little puzzle pieces that you're going to snap together, that you need to move from there to actually code. So it's appropriate when you're 7, but you're not going to get hired to put puzzle pieces, game pieces together.
And it's an interesting conversation because a lot of times teachers think it's of all levels, K-12. And I've had conversations with, first grade teachers all the way up to, juniors, seniors in high school. It's like, well, they're not going to be able to type stuff yet. They don't know that. It's like, oh, well, here, let me show you what Blockly is. This is that, but not that. It's just showing them what to do and understand how and why you do that. But then you talk to people who are computer science teachers, and they sometimes lean towards the fact like, no, we need to get into the language first, as opposed to, so it's kind of, this addresses both areas. I feel like we can give them to tailor to the needs of what that teacher wants to give to their students.
Yeah. And
this might be a weird question, but at what grade level do you think it's appropriate for kids to start?
I've done writing code as early as 3rd grade. They had a little hard time with the more sophisticated logic, especially as we got into if-thens and loops. Mm-hmm. But my 4th and 5th graders and 6th graders, when I had them, really could understand it and do it. And my first experience with code was at Khan Academy, which is not at all a game. It's literally lessons on code. All the lessons, I think there's 100 of them. They're written by a lady named Pamela Fox, and she coded for Google for years, and she has worked at Khan Academy as well. But they're just straight up coding lessons, and they're very, very challenging for my younger students. But we were able to do it. It's harder for me to convince kids to do that now because they've been exposed to the blocks of code and they want it to be easy. But once I get them into it, they like it. They want to finish all the lessons and they want to understand how everything works, because it's one thing about learning to code, especially for students who come from poverty. It's very empowering. They're in charge of what the computer does, and they have little control. I mean, children don't have control in general, but especially children of poverty. And so it makes them feel really powerful when they solve those complex problems. So Yeah.
Yeah, I think your classroom culture has a lot to do with it, just resiliency and, are we going to push through? They push through a little bit easier, I feel like, with the Blockly, just because it's a visual language,
Right.
As opposed to the written. But I've had, like Jen was saying, 3rd and 4th grade groups that feel very safe to fail in the typing, and then work together and collaborate together.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of stuff, like I've mentioned Khan Academy, besides Tinker, besides Code.org. Code Monkey is actually a really great newer company that's come out. And the thing I appreciate about it, it sort of marries the two worlds together for very young children. You basically spend all your time trying to get this monkey to his banana. And it's really cute. But it also, they still have to see, I think he went pay. He has these directional codes, but there's also, it flips over to actually writing code really quickly, which is one of the things I really liked about it. So anyway, but when I first saw Code Monkey, he was pitching his company at ISTE in the new company pavilion, and now it's like a big deal. So I could say I knew him when. And the monkey looks way cuter than he used to. He was just really basic improving. Before. Yeah. I don't remember this rainbow guy. But yeah, so there are other companies that sort of straddle between the two worlds, which is also really helpful, especially for like upper elementary. So, and then another one that's, if you've never used CS First is amazing. It's put out by Google. It's free. They will literally send you a box full of little they call them passports. It's the books where the kids get stickers for completing each online coding task, and they're amazing. So, and I got box after box after box.
Yeah, and I feel like it gets leaps and bounds better each year.
It really
jumps to teacher feedback.
Yeah, it's great. And yeah, I've talked to them at ISTE too. They're great people that are working on that. So there's a lot. And then I know that, a lot of high schools and middle schools get involved in robotics competitions. I don't really have an experience with that type of robotics. I just have like beginning robotics, the ones that we listed. I have Dash and Dot. I have Botley. I'll go get you some of them. They're adorable. Andy will talk to you now.
One thing while Jen gets those is, I know Ozma is something that some sites have and it's gaining popularity with iPads. And what Ozma essentially is you get on your iPads, you get a base and a little mirror at the top, which makes the camera point down. And there's some really great artistic pieces that you can do with that for those out there that are interested. But there's also a coding piece that you actually have these little Ozma coding pieces that you change. So if you can see it on the screen here.
Oh yeah, those are great.
So these are,
those.
This is essentially Blockly, but you can turn it and make the character do different things. And I've tried this with kindergarten through 3rd grade. I've tried it with some middle schoolers. And at first they're kind of like, oh, this is kind of cute and babyish, but it gets real complex real fast. And they have to get really creative to solve these challenges. So.
Yeah, and I have always used robots for the higher end. This year we got these little guys. This is Botley. He's adorable. He lights up. I don't know if you'll. And like, if you've ever used Ozbots, he can follow a line. So he comes with these giant puzzle pieces that the kids can put out, and he will track the line. He's got a little reader right there and follow the line. So on the lower end, as far as teaching them that, he's not going to go anywhere that you don't tell him to go. In this case, they can draw it with a Sharpie, or they can use the puzzle pieces, which I like, which is really great. And then he has these arms that are actually detachable, and he can push things, and you can create obstacle courses for him. You can also code him, which is actually with this. So it has the little directional arrows on it. And here's what I learned when they arrived. This piece takes 3 AAA batteries. This piece takes 2 AAA batteries. And if you have 10 of them, that's a lot of batteries.
Here's a
and
common core math problem,
they
kids.
don't last a long time either. So I like them. It's great with the little kids. It would be great for anybody. Like if you want to introduce even older kids to basics, you could start with something like that. And then a lot of people have these Spheros. This is just one of they have several different robots. And again, it has both coding language. And this one looks the way it does because they're waterproof. So we actually painted with these. Mm-hmm. So we drove them through paint and created a canvas doing that. I highly recommend you put edges on it so that they don't just roll right off when the kids lose control, because they can go really fast. But I really like marrying robotics and art together because it was really interesting to see what would turn out. It was fun. Don't use acrylic paint though; it doesn't.
Hey, Jen, do you have any samples of that?
No, we actually did as our back to school night, and it was a huge canvas, so anybody who came by the station could add to it. And then, actually, I do. Hang on a sec.
And as Jen grabs that, one that's similar to Botley is one called Bbots. And Bbots have very similar capabilities, but they have cards that you can put in, and it will read the coding that way. So you can code through cards, you can code through language, you can code through a directional pad, which is on the back of the Bbot. And that's another.
They're really cute. They look like bees.
Yeah, and it's kind of so you can teach different ways to go about the challenge.
So this is what we did we had several canvases that we did different things with art, and then we cut them up and we created like flowers with them. So some of the artwork on here was done by the robots, and some was done by some other methods as well. So it was really fun. And they were like, wait, we get to actually put them into they were scared to, liquid and robots don't usually go together. And then I've had these guys. This is actually a Q robot, but Dash and Dot are really similar. And he's also really, hang on, where's this button? And these robots, I'm really fortunate to have just.
Back for more hugs?
Yeah. And this particular one, you get to choose from 4 different characters, and they have different voices, and they have different personalities. This is a very friendly, maternal personality. There's another one that's a very surly, reminds me of my teenagers, a little bit sarcastic. So, but so those are just some examples of robots. And the nice thing is that I've found that every school somebody's got a couple of robots somewhere.
Yeah, people are hiding their robots.
Yeah, so, and I know I'll share because the whole school cycles through my room. It doesn't happen, but if somebody wants to use my robots for something on my campus, I'm more than happy to share them and show them how to use them. I tend to use these guys. This is my favorite thing about this particular robot is it's Bluetooth. So during testing, when I can't use computers, I can let the kids use these, and it has no impact on our Wi-Fi. But the kids can still do stuff. So it also kind of makes them look forward to testing season. Oh, we get to use the robots.
Something too on the.
Yeah, it's the only good thing about testing.
It's robot time.
It's robot time.
What I really like about Wonder Workshop and the Dash and Dot robots is, and I don't know a whole lot about a lot of the tools that we're talking about, but what I really like about what Wonder Workshop has done is they are one of the tools that it does kind of scale up. So, it can go from a very basic drag and drop, or even just a logic interaction, all the way to students being able to write the actual code and program that, which I think is really cool, because you see that with software programs, but you don't usually see that with something that would be robotic and that's a little more physical. So
and they also do a competition every year, the Wonder League. Where they're presented with specific problems and they have to upload video of themselves. And then they can, you can put a team together and have them. I just don't have enough hours in the day. I'm too involved in too many things to run a club. Sphero is also that way. It scales up in complexity. And And I think that whatever you're going to use, if it's robots or whatever you use, I think finding something that you can take from A to J or Z would be so much better than, well, like we said, if you start from what you want to accomplish, but having something that scales kind of gives you, you're not just locked into, I did this 1 year and so I have to do the exact same thing. Well, I can take the same thing and twist it. So, and expand on it, I think is really important. Because, obviously we're very spoiled. We have all of these robots here that are available to us. They're all physically here in my room, and that's not the case for a lot of teachers. But there are resources probably near you, and you just need to ask and make people share.
Yeah, and as far as once you have those tools, a lot of challenges are just a Google search away, or
Right.
one social media account away from. Okay, so I have these. I've done this with it, and I found that educators are more than happy. 99.9% of the times to not only share what they're doing, like Jen and I are doing, but to contact you and talk you through it and be able to get you to where you want to go.
I was not brave enough to roll these through Paint until I saw another teacher through social media on Twitter, this beautiful painting that he had hanging behind him in his classroom, and it was made with Sphero robots. Spoiler, my first painting did not look that spectacular. I don't know what he was working with, but yeah, so but I'd had them and I'd used them, and I knew they were waterproof, but to actually physically put them in paint was terrifying. So seeing someone that had already done it and had a good result was really wonderful. And it was a really popular station for that night. Yeah.
So what questions can we answer for you guys about what we've gone over so far, or things that you're curious about with the work that you've done with coding? How can we help you guys out?
Do you have any suggestions?
I just appreciate hearing about all the different, your little summaries about the different websites. It's helpful to me to understand a little bit about the nuances and the differences, but also to know that there are options, so that if you turn somebody onto Tinker, for example, and even if I don't remember the other 4, I can say, well, I know that there are 4 other ones, Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this space it really has exploded over the past
really
5
exploded.
years.
Yeah.
It used to be very hour of code focused or paid pieces.
Paid pieces. Or there wasn't a lot that reached down to the younger grades.
Right.
It was I used to get a lot of pushback saying, like you were talking about earlier, that kind of coding should only be in high school. What are you doing teaching it to 3rd graders?
On that note too, I don't know if you guys have any exposure to it yet, but in terms of like next generation science standards, is there anything in there that is like very black and white, like it is coding and teachers are going to have to do it?
I haven't looked at it.
Not off the top of my head, no.
No. Sorry.
Just wondering. Yeah.
I'll put that on my to-do list.
I know, I have to look into it too.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I've always gone at it from the angle of the ISTE technology standards, because that's what we have. So,
yeah, I mean, Twitter is a great resource. I mean, you could probably figure out a way to integrate coding and computer science into anything.
Oh, yeah. Specifically, the company you were talking about, Wonder Workshop, which is the Dash and Dot robots, you can actually look up activities by grade level, but also by subject and by standard. And they have some great activities that you can do with kids to like teach positive, negative numbers. That's the only one I can think of off the top of my head, but you can look up any math, science, and they do some language arts in there as well.
Well, and even with language arts, I've seen teachers take, if you have more than one robot, you can kind of have the robots recreate or reenact a scene from a story or from history. A lot of times I've found teachers say they have access to a 3D printer and people will design a piece that represents a character, and then that character will go through whatever the scene of the story was. I know I had a 4th grade teacher in a different school I worked with. They they were telling the story of these Greek mythology with the Minotaur that has to go through the maze. And so one robot was the Minotaur that was programmed to go one way, and then the other one was a character who had to go to the center of the maze to find the thing, to do the thing, to be the hero, and then escape.
Yeah, I've had them film my robots retelling stories, and one of the benefits of that was how difficult it is for this robot to express emotion. And so we talked a lot about how we get a lot of our when we are creating performances, we get so many cues from faces, from facial expressions, and these robots don't have that. So they had to come up with ways to show that the robot was sad, or the ways that the robot was happy. And so they had to program some of the lights that light up and the sounds that he makes, so that you would know that the robot was sad, because obviously he's not going to frown. Yeah. Unless you program him to frown. So that was a really good conversation that we've had.
And some of them can play like a MIDI sound, and you can program the sound into it. So
let me just warn you, if you get a bunch of these, it has 15 recordable audio spots that you would need to review on a regular basis, because I don't know if you're aware of this, sometimes children will record sounds that they shouldn't.
What? No.
I know, right? Not Mario, that's hard for you to imagine because you never did that as a kid. One thing that's not on the list that I really, really love is a company called Bloxels. And it's you can create video games. My students are obsessed with it. He's another person that I saw pitching his idea, like his very first pitch at ISTE, like probably 6 years ago. And I was writing a check to buy it while he was talking. His name was Josh. And so you take that's literally what you just saw on the screen there is how fast it happens. And so I've had my students create stories that teach something. One example that I heard about was a 7th grade social studies teacher had their students create, they each had to do some research on a president, and then they would create a video game that taught about the president and represented the president. And so this one group of 7th grade boys got Taft. So in their video game, the bad guys in the video game were bathtubs, and because Taft was a little on the heavy side, but also this guy got stuck in the bathtub, and then instead of collecting gold, the Taft would go through the game and collect biscuits, and gravy, and then the little white blocks can pop up and be a talking screen, and so then they put in information. So. My students were just working on these recently and creating their own games, and it's insanely easy. It's funny because we have a new student in 4th grade who's never used it before. My students have used it over the years, and we were showing him today, and I said, "Get ready, your mind's about to be blown." And he's like, "Whatever." And they're like, "No, seriously, you won't believe this," because I showed them how quickly you can do it. But the great thing about Bloxels is that if you just want to pick up a kit, you can get them at Target. I've seen them as low as $19. You don't need the kit though, and the app is free. If you want a school account, that does cost money, which is great because you can have easy access to what your students are making. But you don't have to have a school account to use it. So it's great. I love Bloxels.
And that taking on the task and the challenge that you get from coding something lends to life in general. Yeah. It's not just creative work, but that pushing through and building something, learning something, trying something new, trying to solve that challenge. Right. And it's amazing. I felt in my years of teaching to see kids who were really resistant when I didn't do a lot of this work with them, to trying to okay, I want you guys to create something completely new. It's not all set up by me as the teacher. It's going to be on you to do it. There's less, they're quicker to say, okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to start with something, as opposed to, no, Mr. Myers, I need the rubric to say exactly what to do. Right. And then they're always hanging on to me, as opposed to, all right, I'm going to create something. And like Jen said, that, when we kind of get out of the way, and sometimes they create things that blow us away. Yeah. And the ultimate example of that here at Phillips is our 5th graders build computers with a Piper computer kit. And they are in shock the first day because they come into the classroom and I give them a box. They're on a team,
and I give them a blueprint and I say, okay, now build a computer. And that is literally all I say. And they freak out because they think I'm going to take them through it step by step. And then the only advice I ever give them is don't guess, do them in order. And so, you know, some students don't listen to me and don't do them in order, but we had 3 computers get turned on today. So the kids
Do you have you can show us?
Okay. I'll be right back.
I love
So as we kind of start wrapping up here, any questions that you guys have, you can contact us. I am Andy_Meyers at nvusd.org. And then my Twitter handle is @edutechandy. And I freely share resources all the time. And also I have all my presentation resources at bit.ly/edumaze. And I update that quite a bit on what I have and connect with other people.
So this is one of the teams, by the way, it was all female. This is a team that actually built and finished their computer. So you can see it's a Raspberry Pi inside. There we go. So, but it was literally a box of wooden pieces and wires, and then they had to step-by-step build it. And one of my favorite things about it is, here, let me get you the blueprint, is I can tell the 5th grade teachers who is really going to struggle in geometry because this is the blueprint. By the way, I have to teach them how to fold it too. This team did
Spatial thinking.
So, and it has all the steps that they need. So you can see there's a step there. Wait, let me zoom in close. So here's where they're putting the screen together. They don't know how to use screwdrivers. I have consistently had 5th graders lay out the pieces flat, just like in the picture, and they don't understand how it's going to be a box because they can't visualize it 3-dimensionally. And those are the kids that they're going to really struggle in geometry because they'll put all the pieces together flat and they'll be like, it doesn't go together, Mrs. Ellison. And I'll be like, what if you did it like this? And they're like, oh, so it's been really interesting. Best part about Pipers, if you can afford them, is that the last day they actually take them apart and then the next group can build them. So they're reusable, which is just a really stunning thing. And once you wire them up, they play Minecraft. So the first time it gets turned on, they lose their minds. So
we get to play video games.
We get to play video games. And it doesn't stop with the teaching then. They begin as they play the game, it teaches them how to wire up the breadboard. So it's really cool stuff. Yeah. So.
Do you want to share your contact information?
Oh, yeah. I'm at J Ellison at NVUSD. On Twitter, I'm at JEllison23. And I have a blog that I write semi-daily sometimes.
And it's fantastic.
It's called write500.com, write500.com. So
Jen also wrote an article for us about how she sees coding impacting her students, and it's a really great read too. So I recommend finding that as well.
Yeah, and my blog tends to be, I try to write it on days when we go to school, but honestly, I have clubs late on Thursday and Friday, so I don't always write it. But it tends to be my reflections on each day in the classroom. So
nice.
You don't have to hear about my laundry or anything like that. If you go back in time, you will, but not.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Deep Google search, you can find it.
Google. Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks to you both.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. And also, if you go to Amazon Prime and look up Make It Work, there's a video about our students at our school.
Oh, yes.
So
definitely do that.
Episode 1.
And then I'll also plug that we're going to continue these happy hours once a month going into 2020. So keep an eye out for our newsletter, and we'll also be putting it on our website at digitalinnovator.org. And then we also are going to be hosting our annual conference. I haven't sent the save the date yet, but it's going to be February 29th, 2020. And we would definitely love to see you guys all there. And we want you to invite your staff, and it should be a really awesome time of learning. We've been growing it over the past 2 years. This will be our 3rd year. So we're really excited to have a whole host of kind of educational technology tools that we can bring to our teachers. We're really excited about it. Sweet. Well, if there's nothing else. Oh yeah, go ahead, Lori.
I just want to say thank you. Thanks guys for doing this.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Yeah, we
Bye.
appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you all online later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. I got distracted by